You've been conditioned to believe that success is something distant, something that requires constant struggle, something that needs to be wrested from life with effort, sacrifice, and tension. They said that those who win are the ones who get tired the most. That wealth is a direct consequence of hours worked, that sleeping little is a virtue, that resting is weakness, that there's always someone better positioned, luckier, more connected, further ahead. These ideas didn't come about by chance. They were repeated. And everything that is repeated becomes emotional truth. But observe calmly. Really observe. People who maintain success over time don't live in a state of urgency. They don't seem to be at war with their own lives. They don't beg for recognition. They don't over-explain. They don't justify themselves. There is a firm inner core within them, an invisible stability, a silent field that precedes any action. This field speaks before your mouth. Decide before your conscious mind. Define it before you start planning. This is what you call an aura, not as a fantasy, but as a signal. A continuous emotional signal. A constant emission of who you believe yourself to be, of how safe you feel growing, of how much your body allows you to receive without collapsing. Life doesn't respond to your speeches. She responds to her condition. You may say you want to prosper, but if your body associates money with tension, loss, guilt, or threat, it will find elegant ways to keep you exactly where you are. You may desire success, but if your identity is still anchored in survival, success will be experienced as danger, not as expansion. And anything that the nervous system interprets as danger is avoided, even when it seems desirable. This explains why so many people start and don't continue. Why they advance to a certain point and then retreat. Why they have peaks but not consistency. Why they create opportunities and then sabotage them with seemingly irrational decisions. It's not a lack of ability. It's due to a lack of internal permission. The subconscious doesn't operate with logic. It operates with familiarity. It seeks what it already knows as normal. If scarcity has been repeatedly emphasized emotionally, abundance sounds strange. If excessive effort has been exalted, ease seems suspicious. If love came mixed with pain, peace seems empty. Therefore, knowing is not enough. It needs to be reconditioned. Success is not achieved through intense willpower. It is recognized for its consistent identity. When you enter a room and feel something organizing itself around you, that's not by chance. When a conversation changes tone without you raising your voice, that's not technique. When opportunities arise without you asking for them, that's not luck. It's alignment between what you hold internally and what the world perceives externally. People sense consistency. They feel a sense of stability. They feel a sense of silent authority. Silent authority isn't built by trying to prove anything. It emerges when you no longer need to prove anything. Most people spend their lives trying to convince the world, to convince others, to convince themselves. This generates tension, and tension is a sign of inner insecurity. A tense body communicates fear. A racing mind communicates scarcity. Urgency communicates doubt. Wealth does not answer urgency. She responds to clarity, clarity of purpose, clarity of identity, clarity of inner direction. When you know who you are, what you accept, and what you won't compromise on, the world begins to adjust. Not immediately, but inevitably. Inevitability is true power. And inevitability arises from correct repetition, not sporadic intensity. What you repeat becomes ingrained. What gets installed becomes the standard. The standard defines the limit of what you can sustain. Therefore, the most important discipline is not external, it is internal. It is emotional. It is the ability to choose responses instead of reactions. It is maintaining calm where there was once anxiety. It is maintaining presence where there was once escape. It is not giving up when discomfort arises. Most people abandon themselves at the first signs of expansion. Because growing up requires leaving the familiar. It requires letting go of old stories. It requires ceasing to recognize oneself in one's own pain. There's a silent identity that gets lost as you grow up. The identity of someone who struggles. The identity of someone who suffers. The identity of someone who is strong because they endure. Many people don't want to lose that, because that's where they built their self-worth. But true success requires a different foundation. Not resistance, support. To bear more responsibility without the burden. To maintain greater visibility without fear. Support yourself with more money without guilt. To maintain more power without aggression. This doesn't happen by chance. This is training. Training your aura is about training your inner state before reality demands it. It's about deciding now how you behave emotionally when something goes right. It's about deciding now how you respond when you are chosen, when you are seen, when you are rewarded. Many people say they want recognition, but they collapse when it arrives. They become uncomfortable. They minimize it. They hide. They sabotage themselves because they haven't trained their bodies to receive it. Receiving requires more maturity than wishing. To wish is to fantasize. Sustainability is identity. A strong aura isn't noisy. It doesn't draw attention to itself. It doesn't compete. It doesn't explain itself. It simply is. And by being, it organizes. Confident people don't need to rush. Aligned people don't need to shout. Centered people don't need to prove anything. They are waiting. They are watching. They choose. And choice is power. When you stop reacting to everything, you regain energy. When you don't over-explain yourself, you preserve authority. When you stop chasing after things, you change the dynamic. The world starts responding to your rhythm, not the other way around. This is not an external strategy. It's an internal consequence. Life tests consistency. Always. It tests whether you stand by what you say. It tests whether you revert to old patterns under pressure. It tests whether your identity is stable or just a fleeting discourse. That's why the path is silent. That's why there's no applause at the beginning. That's why he seems lonely, but it's not empty. It is fertile. Every time you choose calm over anxiety, you strengthen the field. Every time you maintain direction without needing validation, you consolidate your identity. Every time you don't betray yourself to be accepted, you expand your inner authority. Internal authority always manifests itself externally. Always. Not in the time of your rush, but in the time of consistency. There comes a point when you realize you no longer need to force things, that things start happening with less resistance. That decisions become obvious, that the right people appear, that opportunities align. Not because you did something magical, but because you stopped sending contradictory signals. Internal contradictions lead to delays. Consistency generates flow. When thought, emotion, and action move in the same direction, the field stabilizes. And stable systems attract resources. People trust what is predictable. Opportunities approach those who do not waver emotionally in the face of gain or loss. That's energetic maturity. That's self-control. You don't need to rush this. You need to support it. To uphold the decision not to back down. To uphold the identity you chose, even when no one is watching. To maintain the inner composure of someone who doesn't negotiate out of fear. To maintain the calm of someone who knows that time works in favor of those who are consistent on the inside. And little by little, something changes. Not outside, inside. You start to notice yourself differently. Less reactive, less anxious. Less needy of external answers. More present, more assertive, more selective. And this internal change begins to reflect. People respond differently. Situations are rearranging themselves. Life finds its way, not because you asked, but because you became compatible. Compatibility is the real secret. Compatibility between who you are and what you want to uphold. You're not here to convince anyone. You are here to embody. Embodying the identity of someone who walks with calm certainty. Of someone who doesn't compete for space. Of someone who doesn't fear growth. Of someone who doesn't cling to scarcity as an identity. of someone who knows that expansion is safe. And once that happens, there's no going back. Because a sustained identity becomes destiny. You don't need to run. You don't need to prove it. You don't need to force it. Continue, present, firm, consistent. The field responds. He always answered. And he will always respond.